Hi, Mike. I'm so thankful and grateful that you have just taken some time in your very busy lockdown day in Sydney to have a bit of a conversation. You guys obviously have been locked down a lot longer than us here in Auckland. So thank you so much. I just appreciate the stress and the toll that it's been taking on you.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, I appreciate, well, for a start, the opportunity to see you and chat with you. But yeah, it's like this room that I'm sitting in is the room I'm just in all the time these days. So it's always funny when someone contacts you like, Al, are you free on Thursday night? Like I had a friend, hey, you free on Thursday night? Can we Zoom? And it's like, where else am I going to be? Like other than locked down in my home. So
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Have you continued teaching online or how's that worked?
Yeah, I'm continuing to teach through Zoom, live stream classes. And I actually was talking to someone the other day. It's, when you're teaching in the classroom, my guess is that most students probably attend about, 80% of the time. But interestingly, in lockdown and with live stream classes, I'd say 90% of them have attended 100% of the class.
Fascinating.
It is fascinating. I mean, partly there's no excuse not to, I suppose. And there's no traffic or trains didn't arrive on time or any of that stuff. So there's, all the stuff of moving around Sydney is no longer an issue. But also, whereas you might be feeling a bit off or, a bit of a sniffle or something, I might not go in today. Well, it's no big deal to sit in front of a computer screen. And it also could be a relief from some of the monotony of lockdown. But
yeah,
I've actually found it really interesting. I think also I teach at a theological college and students are Christian people being equipped for ministry. So there's a lot of kind of goodwill. I suspect you could get this at universities and other colleges too. But there's a real sense like students seem to feel like, yeah, it's tough for everyone, and it's tough for you too, Frosty, and for our lecturers in the college, and you're all doing the best you can. And we want to put in too. We're going to turn up and contribute. I've actually found some of my classes this semester have shown the most initiative, given the limitations of restriction, from other classes in previous years. So that's an interesting thing that has kind of catalyzed a sense of. It may just be the sort of camaraderie of all being in this together in a way, I suppose.
Yeah, but there's also a sense in which this whole phenomena is changing the landscape, isn't it, of education, of church, of so many things. I think we're all kind of reflecting as we're doing, like, what does this mean for us as educators? What does it mean for us as church ministers? I mean, it feels like something's shifted in the Christian landscape. That's for sure. Right across the board, there's massive changes. Are you noticing some themes from church leaders, from people about what they're noticing in themselves, what they're noticing in their congregations?
Yeah, well, I think certainly, firstly, with education, I mean, I've been a theological educator for 25 years, and I think for just about most of that time, I've been hearing about the need to embrace technology, the coming revolution in education, and that's kind of grown exponentially. More and more talk about online education and the use of digital technologies and the opportunities in the future. But nothing changed much in those 25 years. We still did classes in a classroom with students sitting in front of us. There was a lot of talk about that, but the shift just required kind of great reserves of energy and ingenuity and time, and no one really was prepared to make it until we get locked down and we have to. And so it has been fascinating to me that, like, all the stuff we've talked about, well, we really should think about that. I mean, we had 5 minutes to think about it. I mean, next week you're in lockdown, like, somehow figure out how you're going to engage with your classes. So, yeah, certainly there has been an exponential uptake of technologies, and we've all had to upskill ourselves in figuring out how do you not just, I mean, anyone knows how to talk into Zoom and present material, but how do we kind of foster collaborative learning with
Yes.
students who aren't sitting in the same room with each other? What do collaborative assignments look like? What are some of the more interesting and engaging ways to make education online work when you're not just sitting there looking at talking heads on a screen? And so, yeah, we have all had to learn stuff. Probably we've read papers about this 3, 5, 10 years ago and never thought much about it. So it has been catalytic in that respect, and maybe in a good way. It's also raised our awareness of the limitations of purely online education. So, the brave new world is not quite as there are benefits to it, but it's not everything that it was cracked up to be. And I know so many students who say, I mean, some of our remote students, this is just normal. In fact, for our remote students, they would say your online education offerings have just kind of gone through the roof. It's much better for us now. But for those students who live in Sydney or who moved to Sydney to study at Morling, they wanted a physical face-to-face experience. They wanted to engage with students face-to-face and meet students that were maybe not like them or didn't agree with them in various ways. They wanted the kind of the social and stimulation of a campus experience. And they still want that. They're still saying, I really value all the benefits of online education, particularly the way Morling has responded to this crisis and is doing it. But man, if you told me this is the way it's going to be forever and ever, I think I'd probably drop out. So it's revealed the benefits and possibilities, but it's also revealed to us that a certain number, I'd say probably the majority of students, actually want a face-to-face experience or a campus experience. Now, the challenge, Mark, is going to be, and not just for theological colleges like mine, but universities and the like, what is campus life going to look like moving forward? I mean, it's almost like the spell has been broken. The students now know, well, they already were figuring it out before COVID, but now they know, oh, I don't have to be on campus, but I would like to be on my own terms. So what does that look like and how do we configure that? I think that's going to be the biggest challenge, not dealing with lockdown situations now, but what does moving forward, what does this do to the face of education?
Yeah, and I think there's a real, because everything, we're so hyper individualized in our society, I think this can kind of intensify that. We can choose even more so, right?
Yep.
So I don't have to go to my lectures. I can just sit in front of my screen. And like you say, there's lots of benefits to that, but are we considering the sort of social implications of I can just do everything sitting in my bedroom on my screen, my learning, everything. I'm just, disconnected from people. And what does it mean for churches? I think I was reading something you posted on Facebook the other day saying that after some of the lockdowns, was it the States or just vast numbers of people just not returning to church?
Yeah. I mean, that was a spell that was broken in a way too. I mean, there was all this kind of fantastical thinking by pastors, particularly pastors enamored of kind of technology, that this look at the number of views I've had on our Sunday service. And so there was this idea, we're increasing our reach and all that kind of language. And sure, there obviously was early in the lockdown in 2020, there obviously was a lot of curiosity by people like, I can go to Mark Barnard's church and check this out, or I can visit that one there, or I can go to 10 churches in, one day. And no doubt there was a lot of kind of curiosity and a lot of playing with these possibilities, but it was not translating into any real sense of commitment to a community of faith or a covenant relationship with a group of people or doing the future together. And they all as quickly evaporated as they had arrived. Plus, those who were already maybe not not over church and not over their faith, but for whom Sunday attendance had been sustained more by the habit and the sense that I'm expected, or people will ask where I was if I'm not there. Just the kind of the social scaffolding that, we go every week. When that was broken over a period of time, there are clearly a lot of people then who thought, look, I haven't been for ages and no one's missed me. Oh, I'm sure people missed them, but there wasn't the same kind of social check-in that happened in a face-to-face gathering. And they just haven't come back. So we're seeing, I mean, these statistics are a bit rubbery, but like I've heard people say 25, other people say 30% of the church in America has just evaporated. No one knows where they are, as it were. So yeah, people have definitely seen this as an opportunity to ghost the church. And back to that point on individualism you mentioned, people have also decided, I'm going to spend 5 minutes in this church, and I like the music in that one and the preaching in this one, and so I can kind of create my own bespoke hybrid experience of church and do it once a month, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah, and I think what I'm noting, and I don't know again if this is COVID related or whether this is just a kind of cumulative effect. There seems to be a lot of people coming out that they've walked away from the faith, and I'm noticing this in my own extended peer relationships, but then online with different worship leaders, and I don't know if this has been exacerbated by a post-Trump kind of evangelical fragmenting and the pandemic. It just seems like there's an off-ramp here for people at the moment, and I'm just like, whoa, what is going on here?
Yeah, interesting. Well, definitely, I do think that the kind of the full flowering and then the going rotten of the fruit of that conservative evangelicalism, as they call it in America, and its connection to Trumpism and the like, definitely stunk enough for people to go into a process of rethinking their faith. And the challenge for a lot of churches is that they don't have any mechanism to help shepherd somebody through that, because somebody who has been beholden to what might have just been a very right-wing conservative political movement with a bit of Jesus sprinkled through it, quite rightly needs to let go of a whole bunch of beliefs. But because there's no mechanism, no mentoring or any process for going through that journey, it's either like give it all away or stick with it. And so the give it all away option is the one that they often take. And as you say, I guess if I can just do that online, if I have to do that to your face, you might raise all sorts of questions to me, or I might even have to deal with your grief at you hearing me say I'm walking away. But I can tweet that, or I can just post that, and I'm out. And so, maybe COVID has actually exacerbated the prevalence of that.
And I think one of the things I personally I've felt a real sense of lament about it, because I feel like there's a lot of people checking out for whatever reason, but it's also this sense of, like you've identified, as checking out of being in real-time relationships. Everything's happening online. We're having our fights online. There's this increasing polarization, and which just is taking us away from embodied, connected, day-to-day working through this stuff. And I'm just feeling quite a heaviness about it. It's like listening to you a few years ago about just the importance of an embodied, incarnated faith. I feel like we're losing a bunch of this at the moment.
But if there is any hope, it could be that there's an elastic effect of this. We've stretched this as far as we can, and the results are all the things we've talked about. And there could be like a spring back, like as soon as there is, I mean, you certainly see that kind of in America, as soon as, or Britain, as soon as that Freedom Day, even people who probably weren't going to pubs are all in pubs, and people, getting to sporting events, all that kind of stuff. So you certainly see that kind of, in broadly cultural terms. But I wonder whether also there'll be a kind of a snapback of like, no, I want community, I want connection, But what will hamper that will also be this hyper individualism we've talked about. So. Like I said, I'm hearing my students say we want back on campus. We want campus life again. But I think what they mean is they want it on their terms. And so it's like, I'd like it on Thursday afternoons and Tuesday nights. Thanks. That's when I want my campus experience. And yet, it's actually the kind of the ongoing interactions, whether it's a campus or a church or whatever it might be. It's often just the kind of the unexpected moments. It's the kind of the low times when someone opens up about something or engages with someone. I used to say this about parenting teenagers. My kids are now grown women, but I used to say, if you can't schedule your teenagers to be ready to talk to you about what they're going through, it's kind of like, okay, honey, I'm home. It's like, we're on the clock now. So like, how's things? And what teenagers do, it's like, fine. How's school? Great. Anything happening? No. Okay. I'm glad we had this talk. But you'd be driving them home from a school dance, or you will have picked them up from, gymnastics class, or you'll just be lying on the couch watching a movie and it ends and you turn the TV off, and then boom, like all of a sudden it's like, oh, Dad, I wanted to ask you about, and then you have this really incredible connection and really meaningful kind of conversation around an issue or a concern or whatever it might be. You never know when that's going to happen. And I think that that's the same in a sense with community more broadly. It's not just when you can schedule these times that we're going to be engaged face to face, but what does it look like when we get tripped up into a moment and we're forced to engage, and what we learn about ourselves in that and what we learn about others. Even when we do it badly, what do we learn from that? So yeah, I have some concerns about that. There may be hope, as I said, in that snapback effect, but we have to ask questions about what it looks like for us to find opportunities for meaningful engagement. And I mean, I've been talking a lot about colleges here, but churches are the same. I mean, what a lot of churches discovered was, particularly last year in the first lockdown, was that when you kind of took the Sunday service out and put it online or however you did it, there was not a whole lot else left to those churches. I mean, these churches were working on the assumption, oh yeah, all of our people socialize with each other regularly, and we have home groups and everyone attends those, and then they're all volunteering in different ministries and the like. But I know lots of pastors who said when the Sunday service disappeared and we tried to kind of drive people back to, well, meet in home groups on Zoom and the like, so many home group leaders were saying, our home group meets maybe once a month, and the Browns haven't come forever, and the Joneses come occasionally. What they discovered was these things were really flimsy and not really kind of points of meaningful connection. Primarily, it was all about attendance on a weekend meeting. And when you removed it, what they discovered, it was kind of paper thin everywhere else. And I mean, if there's nothing else except the Sunday meeting, it tells us something about the nature of the churches that we've been leading. And I've heard pastors say that. I didn't even know that my church was like this. I mean, I was operating on this kind of sense that we were this rich community of faith with multiple kind of sets of relationships at different levels right around the neighborhood. But what I realized was lots of our people don't live in the same neighborhood. They don't meet up with each other regularly. Home groups were not really kind of working in the way that we thought that they would. When the ministries all disappear, then the committees that run them don't meet. So all of that connection's gone. And so the Sunday ends up being kind of the primary way we connect, and we didn't have that anymore, particularly those that were pre-recording and streaming their services. And so, I mean, the word apocalypse, comes from the Greek, which means to reveal or revelation, or it's a kind of cataclysmic event that reveals deeper truths. And I'd say, coronavirus is apocalyptic because it has kind of peeled back some layers and revealed to people this church was just almost entirely organized around attendance at a Sunday meeting. Your sense of connection was you went there. We only got pastorally concerned about you if you didn't go there. Even our sense of mission was go and invite your friends to come to this meeting. I mean, everything seemed to be mediated through that thing. And once you took that away, it was revealed to us that there was not a whole lot behind all of that.
Yeah, and there's a sense in which, as this has been kind of unveiled, we're kind of left with, so either we're in as local churches, we're in a really big trouble because not heaps of people are going to come back, or we rethink our shared life together.
Right.
Think when we're on the other side of this, whenever that's going to be, if who knows, how then should we live? Almost, it does force us. We have to ask those questions. If we don't, we could face oblivion or a new way of being together, which doesn't obviously take the Sunday piece out. That's always going to be an important piece. But how do we rethink some of our ways of being outside of that? What are your senses?
I was going to say that my friend Alan Hirsch, I was on a podcast with him and he shared this illustration. He said it's a little bit like the queen in a game of chess. Like she can do anything pretty much. And so when chess teachers are teaching people how to play chess, often they will take the queen out of the game and they will force the student to learn how to play without relying on the queen and figure out what all those other pieces can do. And then once they've learned how to play without a queen, when you put the queen back in, well, they just increase in their skill exponentially. And so he said, it feels to me like the Sunday service is like the queen. I mean, you don't want to remove it forever. It's a great thing to gather together, to share the sacraments, to hear the scriptures read, to meet with each other. When there's something, it's beautiful and it can do a lot of things. But if we think of it as being like a queen in a game of chess, it's been taken out of off the board. We kind of have it, in online services, but it's pretty much not doing everything that we required it to do. So take the queen out. Either you can just say, oh, well, I lose, I can't play, we're done for. Or, as you were saying, we have to figure out what all those other pieces can do. Like in what ways can we foster a sense of community? In what ways can we become more neighborly? In what ways can we serve others? And what does it look like for us to be the people of God without having to rely on the queen? And when the queen comes back, ideally we will then still have the knowledge of all those other pieces, which are increased in their value by having it.
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy. And I mean, what's your sense? What's your intuition about what are some of the things that churches need to be considering or thinking about? What are some of the local contributions they can be kind of reflecting on as we're preparing to go back into what comes next?
Yeah, well, I think off the top of my head, I would say a rediscovery of geography has got to be part of that. It's okay for you to feel that you belong to a group of people who don't live anywhere near you if all you're doing is all driving to a meeting once a week.
Yeah.
So I can see you once a week, Mark, and say hello and how's the kids and what's happening, and then we drive away again. We don't have to live near each other. But if we don't have that meeting, or if that meeting now takes a different place in the life of the church, we have to figure out what it looks like to do community more regularly, more relationally, and in more ad hoc kind of ways sometimes.
Yeah.
That can really only be done by people that you're more able to see regularly, like locals. Yeah. Now, that's not to say everyone all has to live in the same street or anything like that. But churches are going to have to, larger churches are going to have to think about, well, what does it look like for us to provide resources for the people living on the east side of the city to church there, or Those on the north are going to be doing it differently for these reasons. So how do we support them in doing that? In what way do we provide resources and ideas and help for people to connect, recognizing the importance of neighborhood?
Yes.
But also collectively, what does it mean for those groups to think about how to serve their neighbors in those contexts? So in what way does the culture of the north or the east or everything on that side of the river or that side of the mountain, or however you kind of think about it, what does the particular kind of cultural fabric, the needs of our neighbors, the levels of need, whether it's poverty or wealth, or whether there's issues to do with kind of culture and language and ethnicity, how do we equip churches to actually be the people of God in those particular places? I think those sorts of questions are becoming important. It's now no longer hoovering people out of their neighborhoods into a big gathering, which can be generic, and then sending them back to go figure it out by themselves.
Yeah.
We have to actually think about what does it look like for missional communities to live in place.
Yeah. And especially if people can be like, well, I don't have to drive half an hour, I can just do this online. So we need to be saying, well, what can we do which you simply cannot do online? And yeah, like you're saying, it's about place, it's about context, it's about locality. And if anything, perhaps that's what this is forcing us to engage with, where we are. When we can't leave our locality, we've got to figure out how to, serve, connect, love, be present in our locality.
Yeah, and I think that could extend to all sorts of things, like shopping in your locality, like eating in your locality. Really, they may not sound like earth-shattering kinds of things, but if you're used to driving across town to go to church, you're probably used to driving across town to go to the shopping mall, or to go to a particular restaurant you like, or whatever. But what does it look like if it's like, oh, that poor bloke on the corner, he's had his restaurant shut down for all of lockdown, and now it's reopened. We should go eat there. We should go shop at the local corner store. We may pay a little bit more, but this sense of like, well, we're a community. And so what does it look like for Christians to see their responsibility to each other in a locality, but also to their neighbours? So supporting business, obviously care for those who have need or are struggling or dealing with issues of marginalisation and the like, fostering kind of a sense of neighbourliness, brokering relationships between people who might not otherwise connect with each other. I mean, there's a variety of ways in which churches need to provide equipping and support and nurture for that kind of work.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you talked about how in education for the last 10, 20 years, everyone's been saying, oh, it's all going to go online. And now here we are. It's interesting in reading mission books and so forth. It's been a lot of talk about going local, the importance of place. And now, again, we've been forced. We have to wrestle with this. Otherwise, we could be really struggling on the way back. So it's interesting that it's this moment which has caused us to have to rethink some of this stuff.
I think church leaders also need to prepare people for that too, because I think that in a way, once lockdowns are gone, we're all vaxxed and whatever normal looks like happens. I think there's going to be a temptation for lots of people to drive across town to that mall over there, or to go to that mega church, on the other side of town. I think it's kind of like, we're free, let's go do all those things. There's a kind of an excitement about that, but to equip people to say all these skills that you've been learning about shopping locally, serving your neighbours, talking over the fence, making sure the lady across the road has got her medications from the pharmacy, all that stuff that you were doing, like getting your kids to draw messages on the footpath in chalk, or all that stuff, like hold on to that. Like, you're learning things in this current experience that you're not enjoying, but you're learning skills of neighborliness that you don't want to lose as soon as it's over. Like, I sometimes refer to when Sydney had the Olympics in 2000, classically Sydney, that's sort of cynical and cranky about everything, was like, Olympics, who wants the Olympics? When the Olympics came that September, it was phenomenal because people from all over the world came to the city, and you'd be on a train or a bus and you would literally like talk to a random person across the other side of the train from you. So you'd say, "Oh, g'day, where are you from?" And they might say, "I'm from Holland," or "I'm from New Zealand," or, you know, what are you here for? And then you chat. But they might just say, "I'm from Parramatta." And you'd be like, "Oh, right, what event are you going to?" Everybody was talking to everybody randomly on public transportation, walking to events, at the events. And the thing that I remember hearing over and over for those whole 2 weeks was, this is really good. Like, our city should stay like this. We should keep like this kind of thing going. We should keep talking to strangers, telling each other our story. We should, like, this is awesome. But guess what happened, Mark? After 2 weeks of the Olympics, they stuffed the Olympic flame. Everybody left town.
Back to their subject.
Nobody talking to anyone on a train. Nobody, everyone's on their phone, like, just like boom, straight back to normal. And so, and then that was only 2 weeks. But I do wonder, like, let's see if we can gather up what we're learning in this time, that like how all those other pieces on the chessboard are. Let's hold on to that and carry that into whatever a post-COVID world looks like.
Yeah, and I think that'll be the task of good leadership, is to help people. Oh, cool, back to normal. I'm going to the shopping mall 2 hours across town on a train, but wow, we're here. Let's make our life here, and let's figure out what it means to be church here. Let's figure out what it means to love this neighborhood, these people. Yeah, and I think that's going to be a really key task for all of us. So yeah,
I think we talk about this unveiling of the sort of apocalyptic nature of this event. I think that's not just with respect to church and colleges and stuff. That's culturally for us. I don't know about Kiwis, but, you know, we would tell stories about ourselves as Australians as being this great egalitarian nation, and that we look out for our mates, and there's fair go for the battlers, and we help others along when we see they're struggling. I mean, that's our story. Like, that's the Aussie thing. And maybe it's a Kiwi thing too, the Anzac thing, maybe, I don't know. But this kind of mateship story, and this fair go for the battler, and this kind of inclusion of all, that was our story. But as soon as this pandemic hit, we were fighting over toilet paper and eating the shelves of pasta and canned food, and like that, not like it built up to that. It was like day one, you're out there, every man for himself. And I remember walking into a supermarket around that time, March or something last year, and I actually had a list of things to get, and toilet paper and pasta and canned food was not on my list. But I walked in and there was one bag of pasta on the shelf. And I'm ashamed to tell you, but my gut response was I grabbed it. And I didn't need pasta, but I grabbed it. And at least I had the forethought to have a second thought and think, what am I doing? Like, I'm grabbing it because actually the story in Australia is it's every man for himself. And if you don't grab that bag of pasta, someone else is going to get it. And it just unveiled the bullshit of this whole kind of egalitarian myth, this mateship story that we tell ourselves. I mean, it's not true. And we've now discovered something about ourselves that it was not true about the myths they're myths that we tell. And we have a prime minister who affects this kind of Aussie battler kind of shtick to kind of play into that myth. But this whole thing has revealed to us something really kind of ugly and selfish and greedy about Australia, and about our sense of individualism, which we talked about before, but the idea that the worst thing in the world is scarcity, and that we have to take it into our own hands to mitigate against the possibility that we might miss out. And then to think about that and think, oh my gosh, and then these same people are condemning refugees who've arrived on our shores, who've taken it into their own hands to do something about their situation. We condemn that, but actually that's what we're like. That's what we would do if we were in the same circumstance.
Yeah.
So there's a kind of a cultural unveiling. It's also unveiled things for us that I guess we knew, but that we don't like to admit, like the incredible disparity between Black and white Australians. Like there are now remote Aboriginal community or remote communities that are predominantly Aboriginal, which are just suffering unbelievably over this. I mean, the really remote ones up in the Northern Territory have been pretty much unscathed. I guess that's social isolation for you in a pandemic. But rural towns in New South Wales and places like that, they're remote, but they're not entirely remote. And once COVID hits them, it goes through there like nobody's business. And we're hearing stories now about if you get COVID in an overcrowded house in a place like Wilcannia, they isolate by going and sleeping in their car in the driveway. Like that's what like medical isolation looks like. I mean, we hear stories like that, and we already knew this, but it just puts a magnifying glass over the incredible disparity. That particular town I mentioned, I think the average lifespan for an Indigenous man in that town is 34 years of age. And so, yeah, and you think, okay, that's like, can we now pay attention to that? Like, this is not the country that we like to tell ourselves or the world that it is. And so just as, you know, this whole thing has revealed something to us about our churches and what's been important to us and what was maybe too important to us and what needs to be rethought, I hope in a way also the church can make a contribution to a conversation about culturally what has this revealed about ourselves. You know, you hear lots of great stories of Aussies that have helped out their neighbours, and lots of great stories about community groups that are doing really beautiful and selfless things. I'm not saying it's all bad, but I'm talking about in that broad cultural story. Yeah, maybe we needed to be reminded just what a load of hogwash it is.
Wow. Yeah, I think there's those really hard, deeper questions that this throws up for us, and that often in the church we're happy to put them out there. That's what others do, but you know, these are some opportunities for us to look deeply into what is the Spirit revealing about who we are as a people. And so, gee, there's some big work for us to do. Well, I think that's just there's some just great food for thought in there, Mike, and I really appreciate you just taking some time to reflect on this with me. I'm just really wanting to listen myself, just for my own locality and the own people that I'm journeying with, both students and parishioners, and thinking, how can we be God's people in this place? I think this conversation is just super helpful for that. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, not at all. It's always good to talk to you, Mark.
Thank you.